Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of the PvM Hub. If you're unfamiliar with this series, these are sets of guides geared towards those just learning PvM for the first time. These guides will focus on using Revolution and only interacting with the core mechanics of each boss. With that in mind, these guides will not be optimal, but simply a good starting point for those just starting their PvM journey. Today, we'll be looking at the greatest of the Dragon Riders, and Zaros' general, Vindicta. Vindicta is the first of 4 God Wars Dungeon 2 bosses we'll be looking at in this series. Her draws are the Dragon Rider Lance, a fantastic two-handed melee weapon that reaches upwards of 45 mil on the Grand Exchange, and the Crest of Zeros, which can be used to create Anima Core of Zeros armor sets, which sells on the Grand Exchange for about 35 mil. With her being the first God Wars Dungeon 2 boss we'll be facing, it's important to understand how kill count works here. Unlike God Wars Dungeon 1, kill count will remain even after leaving the area. This way you can store up kill count and use it at different times whenever it suits you. You can also increase the amount of kill count you get per kill by chaining them together in a combo-like manner. Kill count is only used once you start a boss arena, and 40 KC will grant you an hour of a boss instance. That means for these bosses, we will focus on getting 1 kill per trip, teleporting out to War's Retreat to get our health and resupply, and then taking the portal right back there to the boss. If that didn't make sense to you, stay tuned until the end and I'll show you what I mean. As always, these guides will be broken up into a few different parts, all time-stamped in the description. These will be recommendations and requirements, setting up your Revolution bar, the important facts and mechanics of the fight, and then a full fight breakdown. Getting into requirements, Vindicta is very simple. She requires only that you have 80 attack, and if you've been following my guides in order, this will be no problem, as that's what was recommended for the Queen Black Dragon. In terms of my recommendations, they will be the exact same. Using either melee dual wield or two-hand, you should have 80 in attack, strength, and defense, at least 60 prayer for chivalry, and as always 70 is better for piety. Summoning actually isn't required for the method I'll be showing you, but if you'd like an extra security blanket, I would suggest either 53 for a Spirit Terrorbird or 67 for a War Tortoise. You don't need much for gear and supplies for this, so I'd recommend around 400k as a minimum. My gear for this fight consists of full Bay Knight armor, which is tier 80 melee tank armor, Bay Knight weaponry. In my kills, I'll be using a two-handed sword for reasons I'll get into in a bit. I have a warrior ring, an amulet of glory, and then any cape I can get my hands on. If you've made it this far in the series, I would strongly recommend going for a fire cape soon. While I won't be making a video on it, it's a great upgrade that is extremely useful in melee combat. In my inventory, I'm bringing a set of super potions, a single prayer potion, a shield, and the rest of my inventory is full of food. The shield is the most important part of this whole setup here, so make sure you bring it. For extra recommendations, I suggest doing the God Wars Dungeon 2 mini quest, which will get you reputation in any of the factions you choose. The higher your reputation level, the lower the drop rates are for that boss. At max rep, the drop rate of the lance and crest will be cut in half, which is an obviously good upgrade. Now, let's look at your Revolution bar. If you're unfamiliar with Revolution, it's a system in Runescape that automatically uses your abilities for you. To take advantage of that, we'll put our strongest abilities furthest left so they get used more often, and weaving in our strongest threshold abilities which require 50% adrenaline. For this fight, I'll be using the PvM Encyclopedias bar, which is on screen now. If you choose to use melee dual wield instead, you can check out my Commander Ziliana guide, which has a dual wield bar I would recommend. From left to right, my bar reads Berserk, Hurricane, Cleave, Sever, Assault, Smash, Dismember, Slaughter, Barge, Slice, and Fury. Now aside from your Revolution bar, there are 3 abilities that are absolutely key in this fight and that you will need to have ready. Those abilities are Resonance, Devotion, and Debilitate. You will need to manually activate these abilities at certain times in the fight, so I would strongly recommend keybinding them on your action bar. You can do this by right-clicking it while it's on your action bar and choosing Customize Keybind. While you're at it, I would also recommend that you add a shield keybind as well. That means whenever you press your shield keybind, it will automatically equip it for you. This will be very important as we take a look at the mechanics. The Vindicta fight is broken up into 2 phases, each having 100,000 HP. In the first phase, Vindicta will melee attack you. If you're too far away, she will call down a range attack on you, which we will avoid by doing this with melee. And every 20 to 30 seconds, she will call down a line of fire, dealing constant magic damage per tick. This fire is not affected by anti-fires, despite what you may think. All you need to do to get through this phase is stay in melee distance of Vindicta as much as you can, walk out of the fires when she calls them down, and keep your health high. The second phase is where we will need to focus more of our energy. It may seem scary, but once you get this down, it is the easiest part of the fight. Starting from 100,000 HP, Vindicta will call down her dragon Gorvik and mount him. Her attack pattern will change to be melee, range, melee, and then fly away. Her range attack is highly damaging and highly accurate, and we will want to exploit that in our favor. The ability Resonance is a defensive ability that can be used with a shield. It causes the next attack we take to heal us instead of damage us, and I'm sure you can see what this is going. After the first melee attack, we will want to switch to our shield and use Resonance. If you do this, you can get upwards of 4,000 in heals per range attack that you block. The only problem with this is that Resonance has too long of a cooldown to be used every time. Instead, we can only use it every other time. So when we can't reso, we need to come up with something else. This is where Devotion and Debilitate come in. With Devotion, since we know her attack pattern, we can make sure we take no damage from this. Once she flies away and restarts her pattern, use Devotion and then switch to your range prayer when the attack comes down, and then switch it back to melee afterwards. If you are unaware, you can keybind your prayers on your bar as well. For me, I like to use Z, X, and C. That will make it much easier to prayer switch, and if done correctly, it should look like this. With Debilitate, it's not as perfect of a fix as Devotion, but it still works wonders. With the same timing as Devotion, you use it before the range attack comes down, switch your prayer to range, and absorb the hit. You'll take 25% of the normal damage if done correctly, and then can continue on with the fight. The whole second phase should look something like this. On the first range attack, use Resonance. On the second, use Devotion. On the third, use Resonance again, and on the fourth, use Debilitate. After that, you can recycle this whole order and start back with Resonance again. It should be noted that every time Vindicta flies away, she will land in one of the four corners, and after landing will shoot out a breath of fire directed at the player. Just make sure you don't run at her in a straight line, and you will completely avoid it. Before we get into a full kill, I just want to touch a bit more on shield switching. If you look at my revolution bar here, outside of the bar I have the shield I'm using bound to Shift plus H, and I have a Resonance bound to H. That means whenever I use Resonance, all I have to do is press Shift H, H, and it will go off in that same tick. This is much cleaner than having to click all of the necessary pieces, and will help you so much in the future as you get used to it. As an extra tip, you can bind your weapon to a keybind as well, so that you don't need to manually re-equip it. I would also like to touch on the reason I'm choosing to use two-handed melee. Whenever you use an ability, the rest of your abilities go on global cooldown. This means if you accidentally use an ability when you want to use Resonance, your reso will be on a global cooldown and you'll get hit by an attack. When using dual wield melee, you can still attack while you have a shield equipped, and thus the chance of missing the reso is much higher. With two-handed melee, when you equip a shield, you physically cannot use an ability besides reso, so it will always work. Once you get more comfortable, dual wield melee has a higher single target damage threshold and will be better at this boss. Now, let's look at a full kill. Starting from War's Retreat, I teleport to the Menaphos Lodestone and head north. There are definitely faster ways to get here, but since you'll only need to do this for your first kill, I figured this way is just fine. Head out of Menaphos and northeast into the desert, and head south across this bridge. Once you cross the bridge, just head east and you'll come to a big hole in the ground called the Heart of Gielinor. Once inside, head southwest down to the Zaros encampment and pass the threshold. Here, you'll want to start your instance, costing you 40 kill count for a whole hour of Vindicta. Passing the threshold will start the fights, and Vindicta will fly down from above. Make sure you have Protect from Melee on, and turn on either Chivalry or Piety. You would normally use your potions here, but seeing as my stats are brewed down, I am choosing not to use them. Here I'm allowing Revolution to do all of the work, and only eating if my health gets low and I'm not hovering around 50% adrenaline. Make sure to use the Assault and Fury cancels that we've learned about in previous videos. Step out of the way of the first fire, re-click the boss, and continue using Revolution. Here you see once my Slaughter ability went off, I walked back one step. This means that the rest of the Slaughter damage will be tripled for the duration of it. This is a helpful DPS tip, and and will be great in future bossing. I move out of the way of the second fire and re-attack the boss again. This first phase is very simple once you boil it down to its base mechanics. Once again, I walk my slaughter ability, making it do triple damage for the rest of its duration. As the fire continues to go down, I simply keep moving out of the way. There will only ever be 2 fires on the stage at a time, so don't worry about getting pinned in. You might be getting worried at this point, noticing that I've used a lot of food in the first phase, but if we can use our rezo trick efficiently, we should be able to go through the second phase using hardly any food. Here we phase Vindicta to phase 2. For the first range attack, I choose to not use any abilities and just pray range, because I find it hits substantially weaker than the rest of the range abilities in this phase. I will start my rotation right after the first fly. Here we can count the attacks. Melee, I switch to my shield and rezo. Range, switch back to melee prayer, and then I continue the boss fight. Following our tip, this time I'll use Devotion to cancel all of the damage. So here you can see that I activate it, switch to range prayer, and then switch back to melee prayer. Once they fly away again, I know that I can use rezo for this third phase. So I get ready, watch for the melee attack, put on my shield and rezo, and then put back on my sword to continue the fight. Here, I accidentally allowed my Berserk to go off, which means I don't have Adrenaline to use Debilitate. In this case, just eat up to a safe health total and turn on Protect from range. It will hurt, but you will definitely survive. I choose to use this as pretending to have actually used Debilitate, so now I'll restart by using Rezo. After getting the heal, I re-equip my sword and continue on with the phase. Again, I use Devotion here and cancel out all of the damage. Now my Resonance will be off of cooldown, so I make sure I'm ready to use that again. Melee attack, equip shield, rezo, and then put my sword back on. Now this time I have enough adrenaline to use Debilitate, so I walk to a safe area, I let Vindicta come to me, and use Debilitate and put on my range prayer. You can see it only hits me for 800 damage this time, which is much better than taking a 4k hit. We're back up to my Resonance time here, so I use Resonance right as the range hit comes down, heal up, and put my sword back on. Following our pattern, this time I'll use Devotion, and you can see I activate it here. Once you get the rhythm of this down, the phase 2 becomes ridiculously easy. You can see even though I've messed up a couple times, I've only used 2 food in this entire phase. Here I rezo again and heal up a good bit of health. You can see the boss is getting low, so I make sure to try and use my thresholds if I have them available. And with that, the boss goes down easily, and I still have 5 Desert Souls to my name. Keep in mind the higher level shield you use, the more you will get healed by Resonance. Here, I'm using a Bronze Kite Shield, so I'm getting the absolute minimum in terms of heals. After the kill, you can see I teleport back towards Retreat, replenish my HP, prayer, and my inventory, and I go through the portal that I can now attune to Vindicta. You'll see that puts me right out by the threshold, and I can rejoin my last instance to continue my hour. This is what I meant by getting 1 kill trips. We will kill 1 boss, teleport out to resupply, and then teleport back in. But with that, now we know how to defeat one of the most popular bosses in RuneScape, and our first boss from the God Wars Dungeon 2. We learned a bit about shield switching and how to use it effectively, and got more comfortable with our defensives. I really hope that you found this guide enjoyable, and if you did, please consider hitting the like button. If you find more than one of my videos helpful, please consider subscribing. I've recently started streaming on Twitch, so if you're watching this the day it comes out, I will be live streaming there. The streams are focused on teaching people PvM that they have never tried before. If that sounds interesting to you, come check it out at twitch.tv/zingy09. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Zingy out.